in an interview recently, you noted that the distinction between jobs changing, occupational change, job elimination, occupational elimination, that these lines are very blurry, making it hard to gauge the real scope of automation. And then in another presentation, you showed how startups are creating fewer jobs than they once did, suggesting that new technologies may be relying less on human labor. And separate from you, Sam Altman, the OpenAI CEO, predicted that AI may make it possible for one person to build $1 billion company very soon, he says. And so this seems to be quite a potentially transformative moment in the labor market. Even in ancient civilizations, manual labor was treated as lower value work, and societies were stratified accordingly. But it seems like we're heading into a world where potentially plumbers could be earning much more than lawyers. And yeah, so so what are your thoughts on how these on how labor is being transformed so rapidly by AI, and how income, how social stratification could change in the coming years?
So a lot in there to unpack. So I think to start with your first question around jobs and tasks, and you know jobs changing might not might have the same effect on workers as jobs being displaced. So if you take a job like a laundress or a lamplighter, right? We didn't automate away the jobs of laundresses by building a robot that would walk down to well, perform the motions of hand washing, and then walk up to the house and hang the clothes to dry. We did that through the electric washing machine, which does a sort of very different set of motions and procedures. And so if you would just have looked at what laundresses do, you know a few robots today even that would be able to navigate the forest, walk down to well, perform the motions of hand washing, and then walk up to the house and hang the clothes to dry, right? And so the same is true with what artists and craftsmen did. The way we automated away those work was by simplifying it in a factory setting and then applying specialist machinery to better defined tasks, right? And so often, if you try to, look whether a job is automatable or not just by the tasks it entails, doesn't necessarily tell you that much about whether that job is going to be automatable or not. And I think more importantly, from the perspective of the individual, it might not even matter that much if the job just changes or is replaced, right? So sometimes I'm here, in school buses. Even if the bus drives itself, you will still need somebody in the bus to look after the children, and that might well be true. But that person is not going to need a driver's license and is going to have an entirely different skill set than the bus driver. So the bus driver will probably be replaced with somebody else. And from the viewpoint of that person, that doesn't make necessarily much of a difference. So I think the distinction there is uh, is quite blurry indeed. When it comes to new job creation, as you alluded to, I think it's important to remember that key reason that we're not having mass unemployment today is that we have created new types of work, right? So most work that is done today did not exist in the US in 1940, right? So most people work in new types of work, and so going forward, it's absolutely critical that we invent new lines of technologies that also create new types of work for people to make a living through their labor. And a key concern is that uh, new firms are not expanding and growing as rapidly. They're not as job creating as they once were. And I think um, that is not just a concern in the sense that it created fewer jobs. It also means that we are having less productivity growth, right? So think about it this way: if all we had done since 1800 was automation, we would have cheap textiles and we would have productive agriculture, but not much else, right? We wouldn't have vaccines, antibiotics, airplanes, rockets, computers, etc., right? And so most prosperity comes from actually doing new and previously inconceivable things, right? So if we overwhelmingly use AI for automation, we're actually not creating that much value. We can get the sort of short-term productivity boost, but if AI is just a productivity tool, then we shouldn't expect to get that much productivity growth out of it, and also not that much job creation, right? And so, the hope for both from a standpoint of economic prosperity and job creation is that we can use AI to create new types of industries. Now, if we create $1 billion dollar firm with one employee, that's good for that employee, right? And that might be, good for, some of the people that use that services, presuming it's, created something that is of use and value, and that's behind the valuation. And it might be good because we can potentially tax that and provide social services, education, healthcare, etc. Right? But if we just have a few unicorns, that's not going to be shared prosperity, and unless their services are much incorporated into all different sectors of the economy, it's not going to create much productivity growth either. So I think for AI to truly be transformative, it needs to create new sectors, and that's what we saw during the first industrial revolution as well, right? So sort of first 7 decades, most of the technological changes that we see during the first industrial revolution is focused on mechanization of textiles. It's only really with the railroads that growth in Britain takes off. Similarly, the second industrial revolution, we see a lot of new industries. Automobile industry, the largest manufacturing enterprise the world had ever seen. On top of that, the range of electrical industries. And every gadget you have in your home, right, is basically from that era, and there's an industry behind it. And then there's all the components that go into the car, and then the machine tools to produce those components, like huge industries as well. And then road commerce and tourism, and there's a lot of new sectors being created, and that drives a huge upsurge in productivity growth over the post-war period. We see that to some degree with the computer revolution, but not to the same extent, and it peters off quite rapidly. And I think we will likely to see something similar with AI, unless we are able to create those large sectors that we saw in the mid 20th century.